Hello friends, in this video we are going to discuss about the gun diode. So it is the first part of the gun diode. To understand the gun diode, we need to understand the EK diagram. EK diagram of the. In this first part, we will concentrate on the EK diagram. In the second part of the gun diode, we will discuss the gun diode in terms of EK diagram. So for understanding the EK diagram, let us take a bond model semiconductor. This is the bond model semiconductor where these black atoms, these are silicon, and these green atoms are the dopant atom, that it is a donor atom. Since it is a donor atom, then we can say there will be 5 electrons. Out of the 5 electrons, the 4 will be in the covalent bond and 1 has been freed out. This is the free electron that has been freed out from this donor atom since the temperature T equals to 300 K. We are assuming that the temperature is at room temperature. So this donor atom will also give a free electron, and this is the free electron. So we can say this this T is the free electron that has been donated by this green color donor atom. Now, when this free electron will move inside the crystal, then it will experience two types of force. If we apply an external force in this direction, that is, if we apply an external electric field, then at this condition, the free electron will experience two kinds of force. Kinds of forces. The first force due to the E external that we have applied the external way. Another one is due to the E internal force. So what will be the E internal that will come? So E internal is due to the force created by the Coulombic force inside the atoms, because there are some electrons, there are some nucleus. So when these electrons will move around the crystal, so it will have to encounter some Coulombic interaction with field. That Coulombic interaction electric field will produce the internal electric field, and this internal electric field will give some amount of force on this free electron. So we can say inside the semiconductor, the free electron will experience two kinds of forces. First one is the due to the external electric field. Second one is due to the E internal electric field. Now, the total force, we can say that it will be the force due to the external electric field plus due to the internal electric field. Now, this F internal, according to the Newton's law, we can say that F equals to m into acceleration. A is the acceleration, m is the mass. So when we will consider the F total, then that will be m star into A. This m star is the effective mass of the electron. Now why this effective mass comes? Effective mass comes because There are some internal electric fields inside the semiconductors. These internal electric field create some force on this free electron. To incorporate this internal electric field, we have changed the mass of the free electron to the effective mass. So the effective mass is a way of incorporating the information that there is an existence of the internal electric fields inside the semiconductor which will affect the motion of the free electrons also. So right now, start. So right now we can say that the total force on the electron will be m star a. And since it is for electron, so we will state that the effective mass of the electron is m star. And if considered for the holes, then it will be mh star a, where mh star is the effective mass of the. So in this way, we will incorporate or will take in account about the internal electric field that is existing inside the semiconductor by denoting the mass of the particle or charge carrier by effective mass. Now we know that inside the semiconductors, the carriers move randomly, that is, the free electron and hole will randomly inside the semiconductor crystal. And this type of motion of the charge carrier is called Brownian motion. So we can say that the charge carriers will move in a Brownian motion inside the semiconductors. Since they are moving, so we can say they must have some kinetic energy. Let us denote the kinetic energy as Ke. So the kinetic energy equation I can write it as half m v square, where v is the velocity of the particle or the velocity of charge carriers. So we have got that the charge carriers which are moving randomly inside the semiconductor will have some kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy we know that is half mv square. Since they are moving, so it must have some momentum also. So let us see that the particle, the charge particle momentum, if we denote the momentum as small v, we can write it as v, where v is the velocity of the charge particle, v is the momentum. So from this equation, we can find the value of small v, that is, v will be equals to p by m. Now, if we use this value of v in this equation, then we can write that the kinetic energy of the charge particle as half m p square by m square, and that will be half p square by m. So this is the value of kinetic energy of the charged particles in terms of the momentum of the particle. Now, according to the wave-particle duality, wave-particle duality, we know that the electrons, that is the free electrons, which are moving inside the crystal of the semiconductor, they will be associated with some wave. This wave is also called as the de Broglie wave. De Broglie wave. Every electron can be associated with a wave called a de Broglie wave. So, from that concept, we can say that according to the de Broglie hypothesis, we can say that the momentum of the particle equals to P equals to hk, and where this k is the wave number of the wave associated with this free electron, and this k is denoted by pi by lambda, and lambda is the wavelength of the wave that is associated with the free electrons according to the wave particle duality. Now, if we get, we can write that we have, let us put this value of P in this equation. If we put the value of P in this equation, and if we denote that the kinetic energy as capital E, the kinetic energy, and E is the kinetic energy, so it will be R h square divided by m, where h is the Planck's constant and k is the wave number of the wave that is associated with the free electrons. So from this equation, if we rearrange this equation, then we can get that the kinetic energy capital E will be h square by m into s. This is the equation of the kinetic energy of the charged areas in terms of the wave number. This wave number is sometimes also called as the propagation constant. Now, if we plot this equation number 1, if we want to plot a graph in between the energy, that is the kinetic energy, capital E, and the wave number k from this equation, then we can say that the curve will be a parabolic plot. This will be a parabolic plot in between E versus K. So the plot will look like this. It will be a parabolic plot like this. It will be a parabolic plot. And at this point, the value of K is equal to 0. So this graph is called the EK diagram of the semiconductor. The EK diagram of the semiconductor that we have discussed right now. So in every semiconductor, we can draw this diagram, which is the EK diagram, where K is the wave number of the wave associated with the particle, and this E is the kinetic energy of the charge carriers. So from this EK diagram, we can see that this plot is a parabolic plot of EK diagram. Now, this EK diagram representation of the semiconductor can be associated or can be explained with the band diagram also. Let us see how this EK band diagram got start. So let's see how this EK diagram is associated with the band diagram of the semiconductor. So far we have seen in previous discussions that every semiconductor will have a minimum of the conduction band energy and also the maximum energy of a valence band is EV. So there is a maximum energy. Let us say it is the top energy of the conduction band. Let us say this is the bottom energy, the valence band. So this is the valence band that we have studied earlier. This is the conduction band that is we have studied earlier. This gap is also called is the forbidden energy gap or energy band gap. The energy band gap of the semiconductor we denote it as Eg. Now there will be several energy level inside the conduction band. So these are the several discrete energy levels that exist inside the conduction band. Similarly, in the valence band also there will be some discrete energy levels. Let us draw the discrete energy levels like this. These are the discrete energy levels of the valence band where the electrons or the holes can reside inside the valence band. Likewise in the conduction band. Now, if we draw the EK diagram, the EK diagram will look like this. There will be this axis, let us denote this axis denotes the kinetic energy of the electron, and this is the EC level, if this is the EC level, and this is the EV level. So as we know that the EK diagram will look like this, it will be a parabolic plot this way, it will be a parabolic plot fashion for the conduction band. Similarly, for the valence band, it will also be a parabolic plot. It will be a parabolic. This is my valence band EK diagram. So this is the conduction band EK diagram. Now these discrete energy states, these discrete energy states are denoted by, so this is the minimum energy level, this is the maximum energy level of the valence band. This is EC, this one is the EC energy level, and this is the EV energy level. All these discrete energy levels will be denoted by these great small circles that I am drawing in the EK diagram. These small circles denotes the discrete energy levels of the conduction band that I have drawn as a line inside the conduction band. Similarly, in the valence band also there will be some discrete energy levels. So these are the discrete energy levels of the valence band. Now, so at t equals to 0, we can say that, so what will be the this axis? If we denote this axis is nothing but the wave vector k, and at this point the k value is 0. And this is the EV energy level, and this is the EC energy level, and this gap is the energy band gap of the semiconductor. So this is the EK diagram of the semiconductor, and this is the band diagram of the semiconductor. EK diagram and band diagrams are different way of representing the semiconductor behavior. So right now, suppose there are some electrons. If we have some electrons here, at the EV energy level, this is an electron, this is also an electron. I give some amount of energy externally, then this electron will move from the upward direction to the conduction band. So it will go in the conduction band and a hole will be created here. Similarly, in this case of the EK diagram, the electron can also jump from the EV to the EC if sufficient amount of external energy is given to the electron. So this is a different way of representing a simple semiconductor. Now, depending on this EK diagram, the semiconductors can be classified into two groups. First one, so let us see what will be the classification of semiconductors depending on the EK band diagram, EK diagram. So, depending on the EK diagram, we can classify the semiconductor into two groups. First one is the direct band gap semiconductor. The second one is the indirect band gap semiconductor. So what is indirect band gap semiconductor and what is direct band gap semiconductor? So these direct and indirect band gap semiconductors are classified depending on the nature of the EK band diagram. So if I draw the EK diagram of a direct band gap semiconductor, it will look like this. It will be EK. So the band diagram will look like this. This will be the conduction band. This is the EC energy level, and there will be valence band also. The valence band will look like this. The valence band here, it will be the EV. So you can see from this EK diagram that the maximum of the valence band, that is EV, and the minimum of the conduction band, that is EC, both are occurring at same value of K. That's why it is called a direct band gap semiconductor. And if I draw the E versus K diagram for indirect band gap semiconductor, then it will look like this, that here it will be the conduction band, that is this energy level, the EC energy level, and here it will be the EV energy level. So we can see that the EC is occurring at some value of K1 if it is, and EV is occurring at another value of K, that is K2. That means EC and EV are not occurring at same value of K. They are occurring at different value of K. That's why it's called a indirect band gap semiconductor. So what are the example of the direct band gap semiconductor? The example is the gallium arsenide, and the indirect band gap semiconductor, the example is silicon germanium. So what are the use of this direct band gap semiconductor? The use of the direct band gap semiconductor is that these direct band gap semiconductors are mainly for light generation, that is for LED production. Because if there is an electron at the EC level, when it jumps at the maxima of the valence band, then the total energy, that is the total band gap energy, this band gap energy will be released by the electron, and this release of energy Eg, this Eg amount of energy will be released. This Eg is nothing but the Ec minus Ev, and it will come out as a light wave. This light wave has a frequency of nu. H nu light energy we can get. So these are, in this way the direct band gap semiconductor can be used as a light generation process. Now let us see what are, if we compare the direct band gap semiconductor and indirect band gap semiconductor, then what are the points that we can get. So let us discuss the comparison of direct band gap semiconductor and indirect band gap semiconductor. In the first point, we can say that first point we can say that light generation from this direct band gap semiconductor is possible, but in the indirect band gap semiconductor, light generation is not possible. Second one, that there will be, when an electron will jump, when an electron jumps down from conduction band minima, that is Ec, the valence band maxima, that is Ev, then there will be a change of energy, but no change with vector, or we can say momentum. But in the case of indirect band gap semiconductor, when an electron jumps down from the Ec to Ev, then there will be a change of energy, as well as there will be a change of momentum. So in the third point, if we take the example, gallium arsenide is a one type of direct band gap semiconductor, and silicon and germanium are one type of indirect band gap semiconductor. But the fourth point, we can say that energy conservation law must be satisfied. This direct band gap semiconductor, but in the indirect band gap semiconductor, energy as well as momentum conservation law must be satisfied, because there will be a change of energy as well as momentum. So this is all about the EK diagram of a semiconductor in the Gann diode first part. Thank you.